The invisible rules governing royal wealth. Nothing about royal wealth is accidental. Every asset, every delay, every silence follows rules few ever see. Rules that do not appear in laws or headlines, yet they decide who keeps power and who loses it. From the outside, royal wealth looks limitless. Oil revenues, sovereign funds, global investments, numbers so large they feel detached from reality. But beneath that scale exists strict discipline. To understand why these rules matter today, we need to separate money from control, because wealth alone does not preserve power. Structure does. History offers a warning. Many dynasties rose with vast resources, only to collapse within generations, not because they ran out of money, but because they broke invisible rules. The modern sheik studied those failures carefully. They learned that visibility invites interference, that speed invites mistakes, and that abundance without restraint creates decay. So, different rules emerged. Rule 1 is insulation. Royal wealth is never exposed directly. Assets are layered, distributed, and distanced. Ownership is abstracted long before it is defended. This is not secrecy. It is shock absorption. When pressure hits, no single structure carries the impact. Losses disperse. Control remains intact. Rule 2 is asymmetry. Royal wealth is designed to move faster internally than externally. Decisions happen quickly. Outcomes appear slowly. By the time the world reacts, positions are already locked. Rule 3 is patience enforced by scale. When resources are deep enough, waiting becomes strategic. Time is no longer an enemy. It becomes leverage. Others must act. Royal wealth can observe. These rules are not taught publicly. They are inherited quietly, reinforced through repetition, and protected through silence. But rules only remain invisible until they are challenged. And in today's hyper-transparent world, pressure is increasing. The systems that once protected royal wealth are now being examined, questioned, and tested. What happens next depends on whether these rules can adapt without becoming visible. Because the moment a rule is understood widely, it loses its power. And that is where the real story begins. As transparency expanded globally, these invisible rules face exposure. Financial disclosures increased. Data tracking improved. Public scrutiny intensified. What once operated quietly now left traces. Royal wealth adapted by reinforcing distance. Not physical distance, but conceptual distance. Ownership became indirect. Control became contractual. Influence became systemic. The rule of insulation deepened. Instead of defending assets, systems defended behavior. Legal structures absorbed attention. Advisors absorbed accountability. Narratives absorbed blame. This created a buffer between wealth and consequence. At the same time, asymmetry sharpened. Information flowed inward faster than outward. Signals were received instantly. Responses were delayed intentionally. Delay confused observers. Markets speculated. Media filled gaps with assumption. But delay was not hesitation. It was filtering. Only the most relevant pressure was allowed to reach decision makers. Everything else dissipated. This preserved clarity at the center. Patience, the third rule, became harder to maintain publicly. The world demanded reaction. Silence looked suspicious. So patience evolved. Instead of waiting visibly, royal wealth waited through proxies. Movements appeared gradual. Outcomes appeared inevitable. This disguised stillness as momentum. From the outside, it looked like activity. From the inside, it was restraint. These adaptations kept the rules intact, but at a cost. Complexity increased. Systems became harder to manage. Dependency on intermediaries grew. Every layer added protection, but also friction. The rules were working, but they were no longer effortless. And when systems require constant adjustment, failure becomes a question of timing. Because the more invisible something becomes, the more fragile it is when touched. That fragility would soon be tested by a force no dynasty can fully control. The speed of the modern world. Speed does not ask permission. It compresses reaction time until mistakes become inevitable. Markets now move in seconds. Narratives form in minutes. Public opinion shifts before clarification is possible. This is where the invisible rules face their greatest threat. Insulation struggles when exposure is instant. Asymmetry weakens when information leaks simultaneously. Patience collapses when delay is interpreted as failure. The world stopped waiting. Royal wealth encountered moments where reaction was demanded publicly. Crises unfolded live. Silence was no longer neutral. This forced difficult choices: break a rule and respond openly, or preserve structure and accept speculation. Both carried risk. Some dynasties tested visibility briefly. Statements were released. Positions clarified. Narratives corrected. The results were immediate. Scrutiny intensified. Questions multiplied. Every explanation invited another. Visibility proved expensive. Others chose the opposite path. They reinforced invisibility completely. No commentary, no clarification, no reaction. This preserved control internally, but created external tension. Pressure built in places that could not be addressed directly. Allies hesitated. Markets questioned stability. The rules were holding, but the cost of holding them was rising. Inside royal circles, a realization formed. The rules themselves were not failing. The environment had changed. They had been designed for a slower world. A world where silence could breathe, where delay was tolerated, where power unfolded over years. Now everything unfolded at once. To survive, the rules could not be abandoned. They had to be transformed, not broken, not explained, but restructured for speed. And that transformation would determine whether royal wealth remained insulated or became exposed for the first time. The next move would not be visible, but its impact would be felt everywhere. The climax did not arrive as a public crisis. It arrived as an internal redesign. Royal wealth did not abandon its invisible rules. It rebuilt them for speed. Insulation became dynamic. Assets were no longer just layered. They were modular, able to shift, detach, and reassemble without disruption. Asymmetry evolved into anticipation. Instead of reacting slower, systems began predicting pressure before it formed. Signals were intercepted early. Noise was neutralized upstream. Patience transformed into sequencing. Waiting was no longer passive. It became choreographed. Moves appeared continuous. Even when the center remained still, this was the breakthrough. The rules stopped resisting the modern world. They absorbed it. Visibility no longer threatened structure, because structure no longer relied on secrecy alone. It relied on adaptability. What looked like exposure was often controlled release. What looked like reaction was usually pre-approved movement. Royal wealth learned to move at modern speed, without surrendering modern control. That was a revelation. The invisible rules were never static laws. They were principles. And principles can survive any environment if their form is allowed to change. This is why royal wealth endures, while others rise and collapse quickly, not because it is richer, but because it is engineered to outlast attention cycles. The resolution is sobering. Power today does not win by hiding completely, and it does not win by explaining itself. It wins by shaping systems, where visibility changes nothing, where scrutiny arrives late, where reaction is already priced in, where control remains intact, even as the world accelerates. The invisible rules still govern royal wealth. They are just harder to see than ever, and that is the point, because the most dangerous systems are not the ones you cannot observe. They are the ones you think you understand. The invisible